Ladies and gentlemen, Gary Moore.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Cullen. Thanks so much. And welcome to Tell the Truth. Now, if you lived in mainland China, in Red China, and were to stroll the streets or look on any flat surface anywhere, you would be more than familiar with all these posters. Posters like this one that says, I'll translate it for you in little bits as we go. This says, "Long live our great leader. Long live our great teacher. Long live our great philosopher. Long live our helmsman, Chairman Mao." And then going up here, this one says, "Long live Marxist, Leninist, and Maoist thoughts." And down here, this one says, "Vigorously study and apply Chairman Mao's philosophy." And you see the worker reading the thoughts of Mao, the red book. And over here, this one says, "Make philosophy a weapon in the hands of the masses." Well, now, our first guest has just returned from 2.5 months, a 2.5-month trip in mainland China. Naturally, we're anxious to talk to her, but first we're anxious to meet our panel here on To Tell the Truth.
Bill Cullen. Peggy Cass. Nipsey Russell. And Kitty Carlisle.
Hey there, panel.
Hi there, Gare.
This is, by the way, the thing that I have in my hand, the famous little red book.
Right.
It's a very handsome little thing. I don't know whether this is the common edition or not.
Yeah.
I can't give you a close-up look at it because it's got a picture on the back that I don't want you to look at at the moment.
Wow.
But now let us meet the reporter who went to communist China.
Number one, what is your name, please?
My name is Audrey Topping.
Number two.
My name is Audrey Topping.
Number three.
My name is Audrey Topping.
And, of course, only one of them is really telling the truth. You judge. Here is Audrey Topping's story. I, Audrey Topping, have just returned from a 10-week journalistic tour of communist China. It was somewhat of a homecoming for me. You see, my father was for many years Canada's chargé d'affaires in China, and my husband and I met in Nanking. In April, my father returned to China on a sentimental pilgrimage to his birthplace in Hubei province. I accompanied him on this trip and was present at his reunion with an old friend, Premier Zhou Enlai. My husband, assistant managing editor of the New York Times, was granted a visa just in time to join me for the last 5 weeks of my stay in China. As a matter of fact, the Chinese government detoured an air flight from Canton to Hangzhou, especially so that my husband could be with me on my birthday. Signed, Audrey Topping. You gotta admit this is a pretty fascinating story. We'll be back after a few capitalistic messages. Now, panel, we have 3 charming ladies over here, all of whom claim to be Audrey Topping, news reporter who has just returned from mainland China. And let's start with the ever inscrutable Bill Cullen.
I am pretty inscrutable. Number 3, Miss Topping, number 3, you went on a journalistic tour of China. What was your purpose? I mean, what did you hope to learn in that journalistic tour?
Well, actually, it was a rather sentimental homecoming for my father, and my sister and I went with him.
Uh-huh.
And while there, I've done photography and writing freelance for a long time, and I thought this was a perfect opportunity that most people wouldn't be able to avail themselves of, to go and take pictures and meet the various interesting people in China and see really what's happening over there.
Thank you. Number 1, how were you about taking pictures? I mean, were they pretty open about letting you take what you wanted to take?
Absolutely. I think the only place that I was asked please not to photograph was in the subway system in Peking.
Number 2, do you hold with that in the subway system?
Yes.
What do they have down there that they don't want photographed? Or do you know?
I don't know.
I know why we don't want our subway system photographed, because we're ashamed of it, that's why. But
No, this one's very clean.
this is a nice clean sub, and they wouldn't let you take. Maybe not enough light down there.
Perhaps not. Let's go to Peggy.
Number one, what was the name of the minister who was in charge of the Cultural Revolution?
The minister in charge of the Cultural Revolution. Minister Wao Sung.
Thank you. Well, number three, what did happen to the minister who was blamed for the Cultural Revolution?
He's no longer minister.
Thank you. Number two, what do you think happened to him?
He's in the process of being re-educated.
Thank you. Number one, could you give me the dates of the Ming Dynasty?
Yes, approximately 600
To what?
to 9.
Thank you. Number three, which of the Sung sisters is still living in China?
Madame Sun Yat-sen.
Thank you. And what's her Chinese name, her first name?
I really don't know.
Thank you. Number two, in which province was Chairman Mao holed up? Did he take it on the Long March? What province did they stay in for that long time when Chiang Kai-shek was still in China?
Shenxi.
Thank you. And number one, what kind of cook...
Hey, Peggy, you're tough. Let's go to Nipsey.
Right. Number three, someone connected with the New York Times recently underwent surgery in China. Can you tell us a little about that?
That's right. That was Scotty Reston, and it was most interesting because he had acupuncture, which has been written about so tremendously and is being used in this country
Thank
now.
you. Number two, does Canada still maintain total diplomatic relationships with China?
Yes.
And number one, do you speak the language?
I speak Mandarin, conversational Mandarin.
Did you employ it in your interviews there?
Yes, I did.
During this trip?
Yes.
Number two again, under what auspices did you travel this time?
I traveled as a tourist.
With no government sanction or no...
Oh, yes. It has to be accepted by the Chinese government.
I see. Number three, how did the young people who went over with the ping pong games procure that invitation?
There was very little said about the ping pong games, surprisingly enough, but they went through a director in this country who contacted Zhou Enlai directly.
Thank you, Nipsey. And finally, the kid.
Thank you. Number two, what is your husband's name?
Seymour Topping.
And number three, do you agree with the province that number two said where they were holed up in the caves?
Yes.
Number one, what lady is famous in the Chinese government at the moment? What is her name?
She is the wife of Chairman Mao, and her name is Zhang Chung.
And number three, what was General Stilwell's sobriquet?
I really don't recall.
Number two, did you ask Zhou Enlai anything about his meeting with Kissinger, or were you there before that?
Before that.
Oh, so you had no way of knowing.
That's right.
Number one, what paper do you work for?
I work for no paper. I'm freelance.
Oh, number two, would you say house for me?
House.
Number three, what is Madame Chiang Kai-shek's first name?
I really don't know.
Number two, do you know?
I'm not sure. I think it's Su Ling, but I'm not sure.
Says she's not sure. Well, we're going to find out in a minute who's who. Let's take a look over there. You all mark your ballots, and we must decide between number one...
I haven't the foggiest.
Me either.
Or number two, or number three. And we pay $50 for a wrong vote, $500 if all the votes are wrong, and the panel is openly buffalo.
Wow.
Nobody seems to know anything. But Bill Cullen has to be the first not to know.
I'm dying to know why they didn't let her photograph in the subway. I actually had no idea in the world for whom I was going to vote until Kitty asked number two to say house, and she didn't say house like a Canadian, so that eliminated her. And I sort of flipped a mental coin and came up with three. They were all so good, so I voted for number three.
All righty, got a three short. And Peggy, on what basis are you going to do what?
I don't know the dates of the Ming Dynasty. It just sounds like a good question. Well, actually, the man who they blamed for the Cultural Revolution was executed, and nobody said that. But I voted for number one. ESP, I don't know. I think
You're
it's...
saying he's being re-educated.
600 to 900 sounds pretty good, although I thought it was longer than that as well.
One-sided game.
Nipsey, what are you going to do?
Well, they all were well informed, but I guess possibly because we questioned them more completely, I thought number three had the greatest compendium of knowledge.
All right, you got a pair of threes and a one. And
Well, I eliminated number two because Mrs. Chiang Kai-shek's name is Mei Ling, and
She said she wasn't sure.
Yeah, well,
It's
it's...
Su Ling.
Yeah, but that's not the same. And number three didn't know Vinegar Joe, who's General Stilwell, So I voted for number 1 by a process of elimination, and she didn't say house for me.
Oh, well, that's the way it goes sometimes. Sometimes your accent gives you away. All righty, so all the votes are in. Will the real Audrey Topping please stand up? Come on, Audrey, there you go. Great. Marvelous job. And so the ladies win 500 big bucks. Let's go back.
Liu Xiaoji was not executed.
Oh, I read in the Times that he was.
No, you didn't.
Let's find out about the other two ladies. Number 1 with 2 wrong votes. What is your real name, please, and what do you do?
My real name is Phyllis Hall, and I'm in real estate in the West Indies.
How about that? And number 3 with 2 wrong votes. What is your real name, please, and what do you do?
My name is Jean Eddy, and I'm Vice President and Merchandise Manager of Bonwit Teller.
Me too.
Mrs. Topping, how long is it estimated before China will develop the kind of nuclear capability that we ought to worry about?
I really don't know the answer to that. I think any nuclear capability one should worry about.
I think it's poorly phrased on my part, but I'm talking about equal. About
When you said say house, so I just said it the way you said it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Topping, and thank you, ladies, also for being with us here on To Tell the Truth. Oh, great job. We'll meet our next team of challengers right after a quick dash to the bank.
Once again, here's Gary Moore.
Well, here I am again, just another pretty face. Ah! And boy, from that a person...
That's it.
Just for that, you're all disqualified. Boy, from that a person could get a headache. This magnificent mask is used, believe it or not, as a healing device. A healing device by the witch doctors of the island of Bali. Now, it was brought to us by a man who some people might call the American equivalent of a witch doctor. He is a psychiatrist.
Oh. Yes.
And let's meet him right now, a rich doctor.
Number 1, what is your name, please?
My name is E. Fuller Torrey, and this is a pipe used by some of the witch doctors in Ethiopia.
Number 2,
My name is E. Fuller Torrey. This mask is used as a healing device in southern Rhodesia.
number 3,
My name is E. Fuller Torrey, and this is a bell used by the Cambodian healing shamans in their healing practices.
Okay, that's what they all three say, and here is E. Fuller Torrey's story. I, E. Fuller Torrey, am a psychiatrist. In my travels around the world, I have discovered that there is an enormous similarity between 20th century psychiatrists and the witch doctors of the so-called primitive people. Tranquilizing drugs are a major tool of psychiatrists, but for centuries, Indian and West African witch doctors have used natural tranquilizers to calm disturbed patients and to produce extended sleep therapy. Shock therapy is some 4,000 years old. It began when the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans applied electric eels to the heads of their patients. There's even an equivalent for Freudian analysis. The Iroquois Indians would tell their dreams and have them analyzed by their medicine men. I have written a book that hopefully puts the heretofore ridiculed practices of witch doctors into proper perspective. I call it The Mind Game, Witch Doctors and Psychiatrists. Signed, E. Fuller Torrey. Kitty says it's an interesting idea, and it is indeed, but we're going to start with Nipsey anyway.
Before psychoanalysis, I used to sit alone, lurking in dark corners, afraid to answer the phone. But now that I've been analyzed, I'm Johnny on the spot. I'll answer the telephone anytime, whether it rings or not. I want to ask number 3, what's meant by the term mesmerize, and how does the name come to be called so?
It comes from Mesmer, who was an original hypnotist, and it is a form of hypnosis.
Number 1, it has been said that diseases can be psychosomatically induced, even such extreme diseases as cancer. How does that work?
I'm not sure I would agree that cancer can be psychosomatically induced, but there's a very close correlation between the mind and body, and so many diseases can be.
Number 2, can you explain very briefly what's meant by the term analysis as it is applied to the study of the mind?
Well, analysis is a...
Number 3?
Analysis.
That's very difficult to put into one brief answer. Let's go on down to Bill. I'm sorry, Kitty.
I thought it wasn't my turn.
No, what is your turn?
Number 3, I'm interested in the electric eels as used for shock treatment. How many amperes does an electric eel have?
I don't know how many it has, but about 50 ohms would be the standard measure used for this technique of shock.
And so 50 eels might do it?
At 1 ohm apiece.
Number 2, can you give me the name of a drug we use today in its primitive form or its elementary form, natural form?
Yes, peyote.
Thank you. Number 1, what is the curative property of a frightening mask, such as this one from Bali? Why would that cure a patient instead of scaring him half to death?
In Bali, that mask wouldn't scare the patient. That would be the mask that he might expect within that curing ceremony.
Oh, I see. Number 3, I didn't understand what you said about the bell. The shaman?
Sorry, we're going to go on down to Bill Cullen.
I'm going to stay with number 1. Number 1, in your book about the witch doctor and relating witch doctors and psychiatrists, what do you conclude? I mean, do the witch doctors or did the witch doctors actually provide a service, a useful service?
Yeah, I concluded that witch doctors and psychiatrists do very much the same thing and get very much the same results.
Number 2, after the witch doctor has taken care of the mental part of their patients' problems, do the witch doctors have any medicines that they administer, by and large?
Yes, the witch doctors use herbs. They've gone back to, for 2,000 years, they've been using herbs and mushrooms and many various things that are growing today.
And Bill, from there we're going to go to Peggy.
Now, your number 3, in some primitive tribes, they experience something called a spirit shower. Do you know what that is?
Well, a spirit shower is a little bit difficult to go into very far, but primarily you invoke most of the local gods at one time. The object is to bring as many of them into play and to almost relieve tension through that method.
Thank you. Number 1, who is the initiator of the primal scream?
The psychiatrist in Los Angeles, I can't remember his name.
Thank you. Number 2, who is the initiator of the orgone box?
Wilhelm Reich.
Thank you. And could you give me Mr. Adler's first name, number 3?
Alfred.
And number 1, Mr. Jung's first name?
Carl.
Thank you. And number 2, have you known whether the Rorschach tests still come out the same, or have they changed in the last, say, 10 years? I don't mean the pictures. I mean the answers, the responses to the pictures.
Yes, they've been changing the
And
last
what is the...
year.
Oh, boy, I'm glad I don't have to vote this time. Tough questions, good answers. Let's take a look over here. They're going to ballot over there. We'll take a look at number 1. And we'll take a look at number 2. And another glimpse of number 3. The usual penalties will apply. And Nipsey, have you arrived at a conclusion, my friend? You got to mark a number down on the ballot.
I have arrived at a very shaky conclusion based more or less on the man's erudite and scholarly appearance than anything else. I chose number 1.
That'll do it sometimes. We got a 1. Kitty?
Well, I think number 3 looks scholarly and intellectual. Right. So, and they were all good. I'm not sure about the primal scream. Wilhelm Reich was right about me and the orgone. But I like number 3.
Yeah, Me and the Orgone was written by Orson Bean.
I know it was written by Orson Bean. It was based on Wilhelm Reich.
Exactly. Let's go down to Bill Cullen.
As a matter of fact, that's the only thing I ever read on psychiatry, and I only did that because Orson gave it to me free. So, because number 2 had the right name, I voted for him.
Well, look at that now. That shows you how tough it is. Peggy, you asked the toughest questions.
Well, once when I was up in the Bush Negro Republic, this fella had a spirit show in the middle of the night, and I almost died of fright. It sounded as though a lot of folks were visiting him, so I voted for 3.
On the basis of numbers, here we go. All right. So, will the real E. Fuller Torrey please stand up?
It's 1.
It's 1. Nice going, Nips.
Yes, sir.
And let's find out about the other people. Number 2, sir, what is your real name? What do you do?
My name is Tommy White, and I own the Giraffe Restaurant on East 58th Street.
Nice to have you. Number 3 with the 2 big votes. What is your real name? What do you do?
My name is William Redding. I'm a director of a foundation concerned with animals and environment and publisher of a news
See, I knew he had a nice face.
And Dr. Torrey, you said that much of what works in the Western world in the way of psychiatry works under the name of witchcraft when you get out into what we refer to as the boondocks. Is this not because their problems are much the same as our problems, really?
Yeah, in many cases, their problems are very similar to ours, but not witchcraft, witch doctors.
Uh-huh. Very well. Thank you, sir, very much for being with us, as well as your imposters, on behalf of the Tell the Truth. Kitty's going to knock it off for a long weekend. Kitty, have yourself a nice weekend. We'll see you next week. But you, my friends, we're going to see you right here tomorrow. Nipsey will be back, too, and the rest of us. Take care.
Transportation and other consideration provided by Pan American World Airways, featuring theater in the air, international flag food service, tours on tape, and weather insurance, all new from the world's most experienced airline. Our central characters today get a beautiful concept 72-week from Carousel, the amazing new stretch wig that starts behind your own hairline to show off your own hair, also the ingenious Flexicurl. Prizes or product mentions were furnished and or paid for by the manufacturers or supplier of the products or services identified on this program. This is Johnny Olson speaking for To Tell the Truth, the Mark Goodson, Bill Todman production.
I'm